afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another EstimateRocket Success webinar. This is Tom Drost, President of EstimateRocket. EstimateRocket is mobile and desktop software for service contractors that makes it easy for growing businesses to manage their projects from lead to paid. It's helping thousands of contractors to close more sales, simplify customer and crew communications, and get paid faster with increased profits. Today's webinar is about return on investment for marketing. As Nick says, say that 50% of their marketing is effective, they just don't know which 50%. Our guest presenter for today's webinar is Nick May. Nick started his very first painting business to put himself through college. His dad always said, now remember, Nick, you're going to school so you don't have to paint for the rest of your life. Well, 20 years later, Nick has built one of the largest, most successful interior painting businesses in the Denver, Colorado area, voted best paint contractor by Colorado 3 years in a row. In 2014, Nick created the Chaise Lounge podcast, where he interviews the most successful interior designers across the country. And in 2018, Nick launched the Business Brush, a podcast for painters to learn how to drop the brush and make more money. During the webinar today, if you have any questions, please feel free in the question console to write them down, and we'll take them at the end of the webinar or potentially during the webinar. And definitely want your feedback and questions. Nick, thank you for being here today. The topic for today's webinar is timeless and affects every business on the planet, including ours, and probably especially ours. So very, very timely and very real important thing for all businesses, not just contractors. So
100%.
Without any further ado, it's all yours, Nick.
All right, Tom. Well, thanks a ton for inviting me to do this. So a little caveat, guys, I have never done a webinar before. At least I can't remember ever doing a webinar. So this is all new territory for me. I'm used to just hanging out in my studio with the microphone and chatting with people. And now I've got to manage a slide deck and go through my information and have zero immediate feedback from people. So we are going to try and have an opportunity at the very end to answer some questions. And so as you have questions, maybe put them into the questions little area. I actually don't know how you guys see it, but there's a little bar on the right-hand side of my screen that if I had a question, I could put in. So hopefully you're seeing the same exact thing. And
lower right on your control panel on your webinar.
Okay. Yep. So so we talk about marketing all the time. I talk about it on the podcast. For those of you who know who I am, who've listened to the Business Brush podcast, you know that we talk about the business of paint contracting. And one of my hot buttons or favorite things to talk about is marketing. How do we get the phone to ring? And one thing I know from talking to literally hundreds, if not thousands of entrepreneurs in just about every industry is that a lot of people will say this: 50% of my marketing is effective. I just don't know which 50%, which isn't real helpful, right? So one thing I am very diligent about is making sure that 100% of my marketing is effective. We probably aren't 100%, but we are probably closer to 90, 92% because we just don't spend in bad ways, and we track everything. So we cut it off if it doesn't produce a really good ROI, and we're going to get into what is a good ROI here in a minute. We just stop doing it. And so we are always analyzing it, and we are always tweaking what we're doing, how we're spending, how much we're spending, and where it's all going. So let's just jump in. And again, this is the first time I've done this, and I'm actually doing it on a Google presentation deck that I had my team help me create. And so sorry if I stumble a little bit through this, but my name is Nick May, and I'm an actual paint contractor, guys. I am not just a talking head who likes to say theory. Everything that I talk about comes from actual practice, and we just celebrated 20 years in business May 1st, and I did start painting in college. We currently have, actually, I think this might be a little bit outdated. I think painters since then. But as of the writing of this, 13 painters, 1 carpenter, 2 office staff, 1 interior designer on staff, 1.25 project managers, because we're in the process of training somebody right now. The color consultant is actually our interior designer. I have 1 salesperson plus myself. I only probably do between 5 and 8 estimates per week when I'm in town. And then a marketing team, which is actually IMA Media, which is the company that does our podcasting. And so where I want to start this conversation is, what is marketing? In my definition that I like to talk about is anything that communicates your value proposition. A lot of people, I have a degree in marketing from the University of South Carolina, and there was a lot of different definitions that were thrown about, but I do like that conversation of what is bringing actual value to the market. And so we're going to talk about 2 different kinds of marketing, but everything that we do communicates our value proposition in a good way or a bad way. But everything does. So whether you're paying attention to it or not, we are communicating something at all times. What products and services, how are we perceived in the marketplace? What pain points? What are the customers gaining? What we want the customers to know, what are they responsible for? And so when we have a miscommunication, then there are pain points. So there are 2 different types of marketing that I like to talk about. The first being direct marketing, and the next being indirect. And so my definition of direct marketing is anything that is an active campaign. This is typically what people think about when they think about marketing. Anything that we're doing actively to initiate and drive inquiries into sales. So that's going to be, oops, I think I went backwards. I went the wrong direction. So a lot of things that you guys are all familiar with: Google ads, Facebook ads, a magazine ad, radio, networking events. So think of when you go to a BNI or a Chamber of Commerce. That is an active thing that we're doing to try and get leads. A sponsorship of any sort. Cold calling. I know people that have teams of people that actually cold call. One of the guys in one of our groups recently was talking about hiring somebody to knock on doors in neighborhoods. So that is an active thing that we're doing to drive sales. Email campaigns. An email campaign might not cost you very much, but is an active thing that we're doing to get more sales opportunities. I keep going backwards on this stupid mouse. But then there's indirect marketing, when your value proposition is communicated through the customer experience. And so these are all the things that people don't think of when we talk about marketing. So that could be your company uniform or lack thereof. So if you don't have your guys in t-shirts, it still communicates something, guys. Telephone conversations. We're going to hit on telephone pretty strong because I believe it is a very important piece of our marketing. It is the first thing that communicates anything to many of our customers, or very soon their second or third. Our vehicles that we drive, the signage that we have, and the customer service or the customer experience. One of the things before I go on to the next thing is customer experience. I always like to bring up Starbucks, and I use Starbucks as an example and as a direct corollary for my business, because I like to think of us being the Starbucks of paint contracting. And when I say that, we are trying to create a very consistent customer experience, but I know that each team and every job is different. So just like you go to a different Starbucks, whether that's in Boston, whether that's in Denver, Colorado, Chicago, New York, or I've been to Spain and I've been to London, I've been to Moscow, and I've had Starbucks in all of these different places, and it's a very similar experience. The coffee, the end result is very much the same, They have a lot of the same verbiage, but they don't always have the same products. And every single Starbucks store itself is a slightly different experience because they all look different. So just like that, every team for me is different, but we are hoping to produce a very similar end result and customer experience for our customers, in that they are communicated well and they know what's going on and they have a great end result on their project. So those are all things. And so lead intake form for me, so phones, if you don't have a very consistent way to answer your phones, then I highly recommend you look into this. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But the lead intake form is the very first piece that is really a system. So we talk about systems a lot, not only marketing, have systems throughout your business to make sure that things are consistent. And this lead intake form is one of the things that's very important for us as a team. It's going to collect a lot of information so that we can, on the back end, know what our ROI is for our marketing. And so if we don't gather this information, we can't track all of these things. So this is what we use as a team. This is one of the forms that we actually use as a company that is not a online form. Most of my forms that my team uses are all in the cloud or on our website that they have access to. This is an actual, we print tablets up of these. So we go to Kinko's and have it printed and have it bound so that it's just a very simple system. So when our gals in the office take a phone call, this is what they're going over. We want to make sure we get the client's name. If you're working with like a designer or a contractor, there will be a few pieces of information that we can kind of put down in that line. We obviously have to get their phone number. We use texting a lot in our communications. And we have found that more and more of our clients want to be communicated with via text. And so we ask this as a question very early on. We want to know if they're previously contacted. I think that's supposed to say previous customer. And then we're going to gather all of their information. And then this source, right, this referral source, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor or not, but referral source is very, very important for tracking this ROI. Was it a Google ad? Was it a Facebook ad? Was it a referral? And if so, what kind of referral? So for us, we have real estate agents, we have interior designers, we have previous customers, we have friends and family. There's all sorts of different ways that people can be hearing about us, word of mouth sources on Facebook. So we try to dial in as much as we can. And sometimes, despite all of our efforts, our office has a hard time actually finding out what the referral source. And so we have a code in there. I can't remember off the top of my head whether it's miscellaneous or does not know or something like that. And so when I would go out or my salesperson would go out, we're going to drill down and have a little bit further conversation. I remember just recently I was on an estimate with a customer, and they actually had told our office that it was a Google search. But when I was talking to her, she kept referring back to Facebook and knowing that she had originally heard about us from Facebook. So if that's the dominant thing, I want to go back and change in our system that we use, which is going to be EstimateRocket. We're going to change that over from Google over to Facebook, because we're spending a lot of money and a lot of attention over on Facebook. And then we're going to get a description of the project. This is an area that our office is going to use for trying to qualify our customer. So there are certain things that we know, is this going to be a good lead for us or not? If they start talking about, well, we just want, a laundry room or a bathroom, or really just want some accent walls, if that's what the conversation becomes, then our office knows that they're going to talk about our minimums, like a $1,500 minimum for wall painting or a $2,000 for doing cabinets. So that's gonna ward off any, kind of time sucks or waste, we don't want to waste their time or our time. So if they're going to have us out for just a really small painting project, like this morning, a designer emailed me and sent me a picture of a vanity that she had. They had water damage and just wanted that vanity to get painted. I said, hey, just so you know, we have a $1,500 minimum, and that's we do lower it for designers or previous customers from that 2,000. So just so you guys don't think I'm contradicting myself. But we let them know that it's going to be a $1,500 project at minimum, so they're not surprised down the road. And that's frustrating. I don't want to go out to a project, and I don't want to spend an hour of my time going out on a project if that $1,500 is out of their budget. Now, I did tell her that we can add other things to it. So if she has other things in the house that they would like us to come out, but she said that she'll probably just go ahead and replace the cabinets then because it was out of the budget. So the next piece is time frame. We always want to get a time frame because the time frame is very important. If they're trying to get something done within 2 weeks and we know that we're not going to be able to get out there in 2 weeks, then we don't want to waste their time. So we are very clear on our time frame, and a lot of guys are very afraid of this, but we find that letting people know that our standard lead time is 6 to 8 weeks is helpful. And a lot of times when it's a cabinet project, or for you guys that do a lot of exterior painting, this is pretty standard in the industry. Hey, we're booked out through July, just so you know, we're booking for August. That lets them know that we're still got plenty of time, that even if we back up, if they're late in August, we still have plenty of time to get that project. But if you are like one of the guys I talked to earlier today that said he's booked out all the way through into October already, and that they would already probably be looking to schedule projects for the 2020 season, we want to let them know that now and not frustrate them and get them upset. So all of this information is super important on this ad, and it is really the starting point for tracking so that we can have that good ROI. How do you know if marketing is effective? Well, obviously, just what I went over with this form, we want to know why the customer is reaching out and how they heard about us so that we can make better choices in the future on the way we spend our money, our dollars, and our time. Because as you guys know, a lot of the things that we do from a marketing perspective isn't necessarily an investment of money, but is just as important because it is our investment of time. And there's a lot of things that we can do, whether it's a networking thing, or maybe you're the one that's building out websites. Maybe you're the one that's spending all the time on Facebook. So that's not necessarily if you're not doing Facebook ads, but you are doing a lot of things to create content on Facebook. That is your time investment and is just as important and just as valuable. Phones. Understand that the money that you lose by not answering your phones, I want you to understand this piece. We have invested, and I have invested in phones for a very long time because, again, I know you of answering every single phone call. Now, guys, if this is the second or third, sometimes it's the first, if they've got a referral, they have zero frame of reference for your company. And if the very first thing they experience in this indirect marketing channel, right, is your phones, you want to think through this. So think about this. You're the guy that answers the phones, right? You have nobody that's answering the phones. And so what ends up happening, and I've been here, you're on a ladder, your phone rings, and you want to be Johnny on the spot. You want to take care of the customer. You don't want it to go to voicemail. So you answer your phone. So, but what happens when you are the guy that even answers the phone and you are in the middle of a project, you are very distracted. Now, it's been a long time since I've been on a job site where I was actually taking phone calls, but I've been there, guys. If that's the case, then you know that the customer can tell if you're distracted. And when you have somebody that's dedicated to your phones and is able to give them the attention and the time that they deserve as a customer, that's going to be a very different conversation. Now, I will tell you, we have invested a lot into this. We have 2 people that are full-time in my office. I have 1 person, my interior designer, that we just went over my full staff list. She's part-time, very part-time, but she probably spends 5 to 10 hours every week in the office answering calls, setting appointments. So we give a lot of attention and put a lot of financial resources behind this idea of answering the phones, because I know it's super important. And yet we still get some negative comments back on our, we send out a survey. What was your experience like with Walls by Design? I just read 2 today, where out of 5, we got 4s, saying that we weren't communicating well. And I know from our standpoint, like our office team does a very good job of answering phones, being attentive, and communicating with our customers. Now, if we are getting some 4s, then I know that you guys, if you were to send out some surveys on their customer experience of talking to you on the phone on the front end, you would probably get some 3s, maybe even some 2s, because I know that you're going to be distracted. So I want to just go over this really quick and show you the importance of having somebody that's dedicated to answering your phone. So I did the math, and if you miss 3 calls a week, so I try to be pretty conservative, if you miss 3 calls a week, you are potentially losing, on a conservative basis, I would say, $173,000 worth of sales in a year. Now, how did I get there? So if you have a 33% close ratio on 3 calls, that means you're missing 1 call a week. And I use the number $3,500 for an average sale. If you do the numbers on 52, I think I did the number on 50 weeks a year, actually, then that equals, if you do the math out, is $173,000 a year. Now, if you have a 40% gross margin, we're not going to get into financials, but gross margin is that very first profit. So after labor and materials, if you have a 40% gross profit margin, which is conservative, then that's $70,000 that you'd be missing out in a year. Now, I believe you could get somebody for less than $70,000 a year to answer your phones. You could get a full-time person for under $40,000. And if you are a smaller company and don't have the resources, you could have somebody working part-time in your office, let's say 20 hours a week, answering phones, and be spending less than $20,000 a year. So believe me, that return on investment is definitely worth it. So I wanted to communicate that as we talk about ROI, because that is a huge piece for most small business owners. Now, I will say that I did a podcast on this. I've actually done it twice. I did it once on my very first podcast that I did a long time ago with my friend Johnny, called Small Business Naked, and we called competitors in my market and competitors in Johnny's market, and we analyzed how many people as our competition were actually answering their phones. And I think our ratio was 1 out of 7 or something like that. So not very many people are answering their phones, and very few people had a professional front. And then I did it again. I did this study with the Business Brush, calling people not necessarily in my market, but just paint contractors across the country that were definitely spending money and time on Google, because I wasn't just finding random people. I was actually finding people that were spending money on Google to get the phone to ring, and then I was calling them. At least half of them didn't answer their phones. At least half of them we got voicemail, and of those, I think half of them had a professional front where you had a answering service of some kind answering the phones. And there were some good there are some good services out there that will not only answer and take messages, but there are some that will answer and actually set appointments for you. And that's really a wonderful thing if you can have somebody at least during normal business hours. Now we've taken this, we don't have them setting appointments for us, but we have a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week answering service so that our customers will always be able to get somebody on the phone, even in the evenings. So it's super important. And so once I've gone over those numbers, I would say if you are doing over $250,000 a year, you definitely have to have somebody at least on a part-time basis answering your phones. Phones are a huge part of marketing. And again, it's that first piece. It's that first impression of your company. Do they want to do business? And think about this, guys. If you're the one that is actually answering the phones and they've already tried contacting 4 other companies, like they don't necessarily even want to wait for a call back if they've left the voicemail. I don't know about you, but when I have been trying to get services done in my house, if I'm looking for concrete work or deck work or whatever, and I get a voicemail, I'm very impatient. I'm just going to go on to the next one. And that's what your customers, that's what my customers would do as well. So you have to make sure that you're answering. It's the point where you are collecting that first point of data and information. And this is why we've titled this webinar what we've titled it. 50% of people think that and I will say, I'll add that piece of it too. They think that their marketing is being effective, but they really don't know. And this is the way that you can make sure that you know exactly what is being effective. It enables you to do a better job for, give that customer a better customer experience. What happens when we have a better customer experience? Well, then your customers know and feel that there's more value with working with you over the other companies. Can't tell you how many times I've gotten emails back and say, Nick, you are the most expensive paint contractor I've got bids from, but I loved your whole process, the whole experience. And that's why we went with you. And I get Google reviews back and they tell us that it wasn't just the great paint experience, but it was great communication with your office and the whole entire process. And so the phones is a big piece of this. It puts that customer at ease. Guys, you have to understand that when people are hiring a contractor to come in their house, this is an emotional purchase. And so if they're worried, and believe me, they are scared to death about bringing somebody into their home. And it's hard to get a hold of you on the front end, then that's just one more barrier to doing business with you. So it puts your customers at ease. It communicates. Try to show and not tell. And that's what this is one piece that does that. It conveys professionalism, that you're not a fly-by-night guy, that you're not a Chuck in a truck. Sorry if your name's Chuck, I'm sorry, but you guys have all heard this, Chuck in a truck. Are they going to show up? People are afraid. And it helps you sell more services. If it costs you $20,000 and it allows you to sell 4 more jobs a year, it is at least broken even for you, right? But most likely it'll help you sell a whole lot more. So on lead source, it helps you understand where your leads are coming from, because that second or third question is, how did you hear about us? I can't tell you, before I had any of these systems in place, I remember I was doing an advertising campaign with a local magazine. It wasn't like 5280 or Colorado Homes and Lifestyle, but it was an advertorial piece. And I know you guys know what I'm talking about. We get these things, every market has them. It's basically paid advertising. They do an article on you and you get an ad in there, right? And I remember thinking, oh, this is making, my phone rings all the time. And it wasn't until I dove into the numbers and found the actual cost based on what I was spending versus what it was actually bringing me, real dollars in actual sales, that I knew whether that advertising piece was worth it. And we actually cut it off because I found out that it wasn't. It was getting the phone to ring, but that's not what we're trying to do, guys. We're trying to get actual business. So find out the gross sales on each lead produced, right? And then we want to follow the 4X rule of thumb. So I want to, the 4X rule, I learned this principle from a book called Outrageous Marketing, or no, Marketing Outrageously. I always forget which one it is. But anyways, my favorite marketing book, and not many people have heard of it, but this guy showed me that when you do track these numbers, when you understand how many actual dollars that this marketing campaign is producing for you, then you can actually see for every dollar I spend, how many dollars is it producing? So if I'm spending $1,000 on a particular campaign, and you can't look at it from a month perspective, or even you got to look at it as in the bigger picture. So we really look at it from either a quarterly perspective or a yearly. A yearly is actually better, because a lot of things that we do in marketing, people don't take action right away. There are certain things like Google Ads, those are definitely a short term and they're very quick turnaround, so we can look at those numbers very fast. But other things like a direct mail campaign, where people are holding on to these things for months and sometimes years, guys, it takes a while. So you can't be so microscopic. You have to look at the macro on this, and really analyze it definitely on a year perspective. So for every $1,000, is it producing at least $4,000 worth of gross sales? And the reason why we say 4 times is if I get 4 times return and I've got, you know, a 40% gross margin, then I know that is gonna then at least break even for me, right? And then if I get a little bit of word of mouth and I turn that person into a repeat customer or a referral source, then I know that it is actually turning out more positive than that. So that's why we look at least a 4 times return on investment. Now, once you start doing this for a while and you really get some good track records and history on this, and you will start to then pick and choose which ones are producing bigger ROI on this. And so now I think the least effective marketing channel that we do is probably a 7 times ROI. So we're not down producing things at 4 times X. I know we're at least producing 7X on everything. And I think our best return on investment right now is on Google Ads. We have not been able to scale it, so you do get, at some point you hit a glass ceiling on some of these things, but we want to spend those dollars first, and then we want to move on to other channels that produce the next best ROI. So Google Ads for us, and then Facebook Ads is the next thing. But there are certain things that you will do that you won't be able to scale very much or very far. If we had one source that we could spend endless amount of dollars and it would continue to return at least, let's say, a 10 times ROI, I would borrow money. I would do whatever it took, as long as I could continue to produce the work, because that's the other thing we're up against, right? So the other thing we're up against is what's our work availability? How much production can we produce? How many guys can we get into the field? And so then this kind of goes into some other areas. So we do get some diminishing returns, because if customers are calling you and you're saying, hey, I'm 10 weeks out, well, but they're going to go elsewhere, most likely. So we have to continue to watch all of those kind of sides of things. So that's the content that I had. I wanted to leave enough time for you guys to answer, or so that I could answer questions on ROI. But if you are not a listener to the Business Brush podcast, you can text TBB to 72,000, and we can that'll get you the links to listening, and that's where we talk to I talk to paint contractors from all over the country, guys and gals, on how they've built successful businesses. So all this information that I'm sharing, again, is from my actual putting into practice in my business, and that's what I share. And then we talk to paint contractors across the country. I would be remiss if I didn't, and I've already touched on it already, but I would be remiss if I forgot to say we track all of this in EstimateRocket. And so you need to have some kind of tool, some kind of system that allows you to track all of these items. Now, in the past, when we were on a different platform, we were using Google Drive and Google Sheets and to track a lot of these things. But if you have one system, if you're using EstimateRocket, you're able to put all of these kinds of matrix in, and you can run reports. So it's really easy to pull this information out, because it's one thing to have the information, but it's another thing to then be able to get access to that information so that you can, on a regular and consistent basis, be able to make good decisions moving forward. So when you know what is producing that good ROI, then you can make good buying decisions so that in the future we can continue to tweak it and get better and better and better. Because when you have campaigns that you are spending money and time on that are ineffective, that's sucking money away from the good campaigns that you could be doing. So that's why I say we want to prioritize. We want to spend money on those campaigns that are producing the best ROI first, and we want to go down that list. We want to go after the low-hanging fruit first. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense. So what I have to, Tom, I can't see any questions on my side. I don't know if there are any questions in the bubble.
No, I haven't seen any questions come up yet. I just had one thought. When you're talking about answering phones, that I think that's a really key element, and again, that affects every business. We do have customers that are using a phone that actually will key data into EstimateRocket for them. So there are phone answering services that will do a great job of that when you're at a stage before you can really afford to have that full-time person. Like you said, you can hire a service. Some of these services are very effective in terms of even having your scripts so they sound like they know what your company's about when they answer the phone. So that can be
and it's important. Like that was the one thing, like we could have gone with just having an answering service all the time, and some guys that's what they do. But the problem with an answering service all the time is that they sound like an answering service. Right. And so we utilize our answering service really in off hours because it's better than it going to voicemail. If somebody can get a live person, it feels better. And so I'm okay with our customers knowing at 10 o'clock at night that they're getting an answering service, because I don't think they expect to get anybody. Right. But when they know that they can get a live person, it's great. And my very first person, to just tell that story, I mean, it used to be me. And about 6 years ago, I was heading to Dominican Republic for spring break. And I thought, oh crap, what am I gonna, I can't not answer my phone for a week, right? I had no idea if we would have internet, and really we didn't. I mean, I remember being in the main lobby, and it was like I had one corner I could stand in. It was like, back in the day when you had the we had rabbit ears on the top of our televisions, and we had to like stand and hold it. That was me trying to get cell service in the lobby of the hotel. But I asked my mom, hey mom, I'm going on vacation, could you answer my phones this next week and just take a message, set some appointments, whatever we need to do, and that would be better than them not hearing from me for a week. And It was awesome. Like that was my first taste, and I was like, I want more. And then I was like, Mom, could you just keep doing this? This is awesome. This is great.
Yeah, that had to be a revelation. Like, wow, huge. I don't have to answer the phone all the time.
Yeah, huge. But it was confirmed for me when I did those tests and I called our competition and I called other paint contractors, and it's going to avoid a cell phone voicemail. I will tell anybody that if you're using your cell phone as your business number, you need to get out of that. There are so many inexpensive ways to have a professional appearance on the phones, even if you're not going to listen to me and just have a little bit better system for phone coverage. Get a VoIP system,
Right.
voice over internet protocol. We use a company called Ring Central, and you
Mhm.
don't even have to have a desktop phone with Ring Central. They have an app and it'll sit on your computer, but it's really great. You can have a phone tree, and I know people don't like phone trees, but you can
Mhm.
do it in a way that is fun and it's not overwhelming.
Right.
If people call, like I always hate to do this, but call my main Walls by Design phone number, and I'm not going to give it to you here. You could find me on the web and do this, and just listen to. As the phone picks up, it doesn't go straight to our people. It says, "Hey, you've reached Walls by Design," and it's me. It's my voice, and I do it fun, and I've literally gotten so many compliments on it because I've taken that opportunity to use it as a marketing experience for our customers, and
Right.
it's just real quick. Hey, number one's this, number two's this, number three's this, and it doesn't have to be this long drawn out thing that we get when we call United Airlines. That's like, hey, our options have changed. Please press 1 for baggage service. And it's just like all these things that you're like, okay, I know what, I don't need any of those top 6, and I don't know who does. But
Yeah.
finally, number 9 is what I need. I just need to talk to a representative, right? And so
Sure. Yeah.
we make it really easy and fun on that perspective, but it goes really quick to
Yeah.
get to whether they're a new customer or they're an existing customer, because there's mostly two different people that deal with those
Right.
different situations in my office. But we get a lot of compliments on how we communicate with our customers. The other thing I'll say with Ring Central is that, and we didn't know this when we first started, like people just started texting our number, and I was like getting these text messages,
Mhm.
and I was like, how is this even happening?
Where's that
And
coming
then,
from?
and then we realized, oh my gosh, this is awesome, because they have
Right.
an app and it comes to our phone. And so
Mhm.
now we utilize it is in our marketing channel. We actually put it on our website. Call or text us 24 hours
Mhm.
a day, 7 days a week. And our
Right.
customers love it.
Right.
People, I mean, I don't know. I'm a social guy. I don't like talking to anybody on the phone anymore. And most people most people don't. But if you can give them an easy and effective way to communicate, especially with text, that's
Mhm.
so cheap and effective, like it's
Right.
awesome. And our customers love it. And we have that questionnaire with our customers. Which way would you rather be communicated with? And almost every single one wants to be communicated with through texting.
Right.
So there's a
I mean, that's
question in our thing,
that's
but
the
I
key.
can't figure out how to read it. It's
Yep. It says, realistically, how quick should a call be returned? We try for the following business day.
oh my gosh, that's dead. You are killing yourself if you're waiting the next day. I was in a seminar once and I don't remember the exact statistic was, but if they have communicated through a digital platform some way and
Mhm.
you are not getting back to them within 5 minutes, the close ratio on that just dives after 5 minutes. So you
Wow.
literally have to be contacting them back through text or phone within minutes. If you
Mhm.
wait a day, you're dead. You've lost that lead. That you've just thrown money out the window. And that's really, this is what this is all about. If you are not
Right.
Johnny on the spot with this kind of stuff, and that's why it's so helpful to have somebody else that's able to do this. Um, it's throwing money out the window. It really,
Right.
that's what it is.
Yeah,
So
those
I think
quick
there's another
responses are
question too.
key. No question. Yeah, while waiting for other questions, we use a system called Telzio, very similar to Ring Central. Same
Mhm.
concept, slightly different billing system, but
Yeah, there's a
neat
ton of them
because
out there.
yeah, and you can have a business phone number that rings through to your cell phone just like a regular phone number, but you don't have to give out your cell phone number.
Right.
So it really is
Yeah, I
that.
remember back in the day. I mean, that's the worst thing. Like everybody, if you're using your business like I don't want people contacting me, but I do want, and I tell people this, like
Right.
we have 24-hour day, 7 days a week answer. If
Right.
you call us, text us, email us, I am copied on all of those. And so if it is a paint emergency, and I use a
Right.
little bit of humor with that, like, and I'm like, there's emergencies, I do know this, but if there is a paint emergency, you can get that to me. And if like I've literally, I remember I was sitting having coffee one Sunday morning, it was like 7:30, 8 o'clock, and somebody called our phone line, and I saw that this was happening and had left a message, and I didn't know what it was, but it came through on this service, and she called twice in a row, and I thought, well, that's weird, like something's up. So I called her, and she was shocked. She was like, I can't believe you called me back on a Sunday morning. I was like, well, I was worried. Like, no, people don't usually call us twice in a row. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I just want to get an estimate, but thank you so much for calling me. And I mean, I made a huge impression on her just by
Right.
being able to do that. And so I don't think people in I don't think the majority of people are expecting it. But when you're trying to get something done in your house, like think about it, like people are moving, they're trying, I mean, graduations right now are happening, and so people are on time schedules. And if you're anything like me, like when I'm like shopping for a car, shopping for something for the house, like, and I'm on the internet and I'm getting information and I'm shopping and I reach out, like it takes me like I have to be really interested to reach out because I really don't like to talk to people. So I just admit that to be, anyways. So if somebody has done that, like they want information, they want to move forward. So you
Right.
have to have ways to get back. We created a way on our website. Maybe I can pull that up. I can show you guys this.
We do have one more question too, Nick. When
Go ahead. I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to pull up my website to show people.
so that
This thing has been huge for us in the fact that people can jump online and schedule an appointment without talking to anybody. They don't have to
right.
text anybody. They can just immediately, it's this big orange box. They
Yeah.
go, oh, schedule an estimate. Oh, okay. And then they go, oh, we just put in my zip code. Now, if you put in a zip code that doesn't work, that we don't service, you will get another message.
Right.
But this is what so I have 0 availability this month. So that's how busy we are. But we do have like some verbiage in there that says if you haven't found something that's works in your schedule, call us because we have other appointment times open as well. But we have over 40% of our estimates being scheduled through this. And
Right.
this has been awesome because it takes up less time for my team, and it still collects all the same information.
Right. And that can go directly into EstimateRocket automatically.
Correct. And I think we are still learning how to do that. But man, it's awesome. And our customers, the feedback that we've gotten from our customers has been amazing. Like they just love it. Like, cause I mean, seriously, most of the time when they're shopping and they're reaching out, it's like 11 o'clock or well, let's say it's not 11, but let's say it's 9 o'clock on a Saturday, right? And we don't have anybody in the office then. So it's been huge. What's the next question?
So the next question is, you mentioned closing ratio, but do you happen to know what the closing ratio is just by answering phone, email? I find it interesting because I am even in the commercial side, it's such a big issue. So I'll let you handle that one. I'm not sure I completely understand that, but I guess on the incoming lead, if you identify that it came in by phone call or email as opposed to some other source, then you would know, how those fan out.
Yeah, I don't know if I know the closing ratio numbers like that. But like I said, the numbers that I ran, if you're missing 3 calls, right? And that can be a small company. Like we get over 100. We field right now. We're on averaging. We're fielding 100 estimates a month, and so we're probably getting 125 to 140 calls into our office. So we screen out some of that, right? So we're not getting it all. But if you're missing 3 calls a week and you're missing one of those, you would be closing at least one of those. I mean, our close ratio is much higher than that. So that's the thought process I had behind those numbers. And I did that a long time ago because I was having a conversation with an electrician who didn't have anybody answering his phones. And I was like, dude, you are missing out on hundreds of thousands of dollars, because we actually went through how many
Right.
calls he gets and what his closing ratio was. And it was huge. It was over $250,000 in gross
Right.
sales. So for a lot of guys that are probably listening, I mean, that could be as many, like you could double your business just by
Right.
putting somebody in your office, right?
Right.
So it's huge. So I don't know. I don't know exactly. I guess I'm like you. I don't fully understand the question, but I do know that answering that phone every single time is super important, and and
Right.
and answering those questions. And if it's, and if it's an inquiry that comes into the office, having somebody that is responding to those very quickly, it's super, super, because there's just so many options. Like we have a lot of, I always joke and say I had no competition, but honestly, I have competition.
Mhm.
I compete with every homeowner. I compete with everybody that calls themselves a paint contractor, because until I've had that opportunity to educate my potential how different we are all viewed as the same, right? And we want to think that we're so different, and
Yeah.
a lot of us are, but in the customer's mind, they're like, he has paint rollers and brushes, you're all the
Right.
same to me in this
Right.
early phase, right? And so
Sure.
it is so easy to separate yourself from the competition in our industry, because so many people do a
Right.
horrible job. And this is a very easy way to do it. It's not cheap,
Hmm.
uh, but if you look at it from an ROI perspective, it is cheap, because you are literally throwing money out the window if you were not
Right.
answering your phones.
Yeah. So I guess the answer to that question really is, with the phones and email, with the incoming phone calls, it is difficult to track that to a closing. It's really more a matter of, you'd have to kind of look at that outside of the system and say, hey, I've got this month we had 45 incoming calls that weren't answered, and a lot of the phone, like I'm sure Ring Central and Telzio do have the facility to tell you which calls were answered and which ones weren't answered. So missed and answered calls, you might be able to actually get a handle on what those missed calls were costing you. More
Yeah, I mean,
difficult
guys,
than
yeah.
a hard lead.
Well, and if people are just answering their cell phone, how many missed calls you got? Like, it's
Right.
easy to see that. And then when you call somebody back the next day, how many times have you called that person? They're like, I'm good. Or I already
Right.
got 3 leads, or I already have 3 estimates coming out. Like, I don't need a
Right.
fifth or a sixth, right?
Right.
So you got to be Johnny on the spot. And if nothing else, like, be texting those people as soon as possible saying, hey, can I call you back in 10 minutes?
Right.
I'm with a customer right now,
For
right?
sure.
But
Yeah.
it's so hard when you're the guy in the field trying to do all these things. You got production going on, you got a paintbrush in your hand, or
Hmm.
even if you're not there, even if you're driving, like
Right.
you are you cannot give that customer the attention that they deserve when you're doing something else
Yeah.
and you're trying to answer their questions and do all those other things.
Yeah.
So
Totally true. Well, it doesn't look like any final questions anyone have. I think you covered the topic amazingly, Nick. As
thanks, Tom. Do you
always.
have it? You said early on that this is an issue that even affects you guys. Do you have
Yeah,
questions?
it's the same deal. We have the same challenges tracking where our sales are come from. A lot of what we do comes purely across the web, and it actually is. It's relatively difficult without us doing some sort of a survey, because most of our customers come to us as self sign up, so we don't really get that opportunity to interact. To ask them where they came from. We do,
Right.
we try to do it, but we don't get a lot of feedback on that. So it's a little bit, we do have a big challenge with it. I mean, it's tough to get that information that you want, especially in our business, because it's all self-service.
hmm Well,
So
and we as contractors, we look at the other things that we experience. Like, you can't call Google, you can't call Facebook, you can't, there's a
right,
lot of these bigger companies that are internet based that you can't, like they've made it hard to reach. And
Right.
in my perspective, like we're not the internet. Like we're supposed to
Right.
be, we're face to face, we're coming, again, it goes back to
Mm-hmm.
they're scared.
Right.
Like you've got a housewife that has kids in the house and they're going to bring some strange dude into their house. Like there's this fear is
Right.
serious, you
Right.
know? And so whatever we can do to ease that stress and
Right.
that anxiety is going to help, and it's going to raise the level, and you're going to be able to charge more. Like I
Right.
didn't even get into that
Huge.
whole aspect. Like if you're able to charge 20% more on a
Mm-hmm.
consistent basis, well, now it's
Right.
not cost you anything to have somebody
Right.
answering your phones.
Yeah. It's huge.
Yeah.
Cool.
So will this webinar be available for people after?
Yep. So within a couple of days, we'll have this posted up on YouTube, and there'll be an email that'll go out with the YouTube channel. Highly recommend you subscribe to the EstimateRocket YouTube channel, and you can get notifications when they get published. We do try to publish content there on a pretty regular basis. And for me, in closing, on behalf of the entire EstimateRocket team, I want to thank Nick for presenting this today. It was awesome for me, and hopefully it was awesome for the other listeners. And we look forward to seeing you at our next Success webinar.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom.
Pleasure. Have a great day, everybody.